Hello, replay viewers. How are you? Hi, everybody. I am Nancy Merland with Merland Marketing and Social Media, and decided to go live with you right now in case anybody is just ready to wind it down for the weekend and you wanted to hop in and just say hello and just let me know in the comments that you're here and I will watch for you. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about, as you can see, had a question come up this week about whether or not lawyers in specific practice teams or industry teams should have separate social media accounts. And that's a really good discussion to have. So I wanted to talk about that and I want to make sure I don't miss your comments. So let me know if you are here and I'll be able to see your comments. But I did want to talk to you a little bit about whether or not that's a good idea, about whether or not different practice or industry teams should have their own social media accounts. I mean, it's one thing that a firm has its own firm branded social media. Let's say it's LinkedIn, your own LinkedIn page. Maybe it's a firm Twitter account. It's a firm LinkedIn, it's a firm Facebook page, all of the above, any of the above, or Instagram, whatever. But then the question comes up, well, you know what? We have a pretty active practice group or industry group. I think we might like to have our own social media accounts. So what should we do? And I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments as well. If you are in, I just wanted to let you know again, if we haven't met, I am Nancy Merland with Merland Marketing and Social Media. And in case I haven't beaten this drum enough, I'm a marketing, content, social, and digital media speaker, trainer, and advisor for lawyers and their legal marketers. But we're going to talk about whether or not practice teams should have their own social media accounts. One tiny bit of housekeeping. If you happen to be watching from my Facebook group, which is Social Media for Lawyers over on Facebook, obviously, if you would go up just below the title of this and click on Allow StreamYard to show your identity, what that does, it lets me know that when you make a comment, I can actually see who types it. There's privacy, obviously, in groups that Facebook respects. So you would have to click that link right below the description in the Facebook group so that I know it's you. The rest of you, I should know that it's you. So we won't worry about that. But again, we're going to talk about whether or not you should have your own practice or industry team social media accounts. And you know what? It's a great question. And it could be a really good idea, but there are a few ifs. And this is what I want you to think about. I think it's important to think about whether or not you have the resources to staff separate social media accounts. And those resources can be in any number of ways. You might have a dedicated marketing team, a dedicated BD team, or a person, or maybe it's outsourced to somebody else. So I think you need to think seriously about whether or not your firm and your team has the bandwidth to manage yet another set of social media accounts. Because if not, and it's not done and it's not fully staffed, then it's probably not going to be as robust as it needs to be. And it's probably not going to make your team or your industry group look how you want it to look on social media. So I want you to think about the resource question first before you go down that path. And let's say you don't have enough resources, or you might be thinking that, yeah, our firm has resources. Sure, they can always handle another set of social media accounts. And that's nice to think that, but we also have to deal with reality, because I want you to be successful when you're doing it too. So I want you to think about, how could your team possibly help? And that can be in a number of ways. I mean, it could be, your team commits to being active in social media. Here's a perspective for you. Let's say that you have a firm LinkedIn page, or you have a firm account on Twitter, or you have a firm page on Facebook or Instagram, and or maybe TikTok. I don't know. Actually, some firms do, so it's not as laughable as you might think. But let's say that firm does that, and there's a lot of broadcasting about what's going on, what the team's doing, who's written an article, who's written a blog post, who's launched a podcast. There's a new podcast episode that's been launched. And those are great. And those are great things to put on those firm pages. But then let's also think about it. If every person on your team was active on social media, And that's coming from a person to that person's followers and friends and connections, and is out there connecting all the time and having conversations and sharing content in your practice area or your industry area, and impacting so many hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the process, that is going to go so much farther, infinitely farther than just a team, just a firm sponsored team or industry page would or account would. I'm not saying don't do the team or industry, branded page or account, because again, I think it can be a very, very good idea. I'm just saying that I also think I know I would like to see you take some responsibility and for your team to demonstrate that they're interested in and have a stake in, and they're putting some elbow grease into social media, because it's critical when we are in an industry and a profession that deals so much with relationships and building the know, like, and trust factors, that it is critical that individuals use their individual social media accounts as well. So, what I'd like to see you do is, sure, yes, let's have the conversation about whether the firm should put up industry or practice team accounts on social media. But let's have a much deeper conversation about getting everybody on your team up to speed about how to use social media. What are the stages? What do you have to go through? How should you use it on a regular basis? What might you do to actually help develop relationships? What kind of content will you be producing on each of those social media accounts? Because let's think about it. You want the firm to build a social media account on your team's or your industry group's behalf. Wouldn't that be so much easier on resources if your team, your lawyers, and your legal professionals were out there sharing information constantly about whatever the practice group is or industry group is? Then the person who is managing, or the team, if you have it, who is managing then the firm sponsored account, has so much to share because you've been out there sharing content as well. And not just your content that you produce, but even curating, sharing other people's work, right? Because that's one of those best practices, that you are sharing and curating content that has to do with your practice area and your industry group, probably more than you're sharing your own. So that person then on your firm branded account has even more to share, because it would be very easy then to retweet, if it's Twitter, obviously, to retweet what you have already shared, what everybody on your team is sharing, but also to be the broadcaster, if you will. And, I just put a point here that is very, very important, that broadcasting what the team does isn't enough. So, yes, I would definitely think about finding the resources to have a practice team or an industry group set of social media accounts, and maybe just start with one of the sites, because this is asking a lot for your existing team to take over and just all of a sudden branch out and sponsor and staff an entirely new set of social media accounts on every platform. I think that's asking too much unless you have an abundance of resources. And right now, I'm not so sure that's the case. So, yes, do that and expect that that's going to be more of the brand building. That's more broadcasting. That's, gosh, this is what our team did. This is, what XYZ lawyer, this is what Nancy did. Nancy was involved in this pro bono work this week. Or, we just held an online event, a webinar, and these were some of the takeaways. And, on LinkedIn, for example, you could upload, an abbreviated slide deck that showed that. So those are sort of more of the broadcasting sorts of things that those team or industry pages or accounts can do. But there is nothing more personal than every one of you actually using your accounts to the max. And I'm not even suggesting that you spend an hour a day. I'm not even suggesting you spend an hour a week, because you can accomplish so much more in a couple minutes every day if you just have a basic understanding of what it is while you're in these spaces. And so, what I want to encourage you to do is, yes, think about the firm branded accounts, but also I want you to step up and I want your team to commit to using social media and use best practices so that you are establishing relationships with people, because the snowball effect of that is going to be so much stronger than anything just your firm branded page will be able to do. So I would love to know. Please let me know in the comments, even if this is on the replay. Please let me know what your thoughts are. I want to make sure I'm not missing any comments. Nope, I'm not. But I would love to know, whenever you are watching this or listening to this, what you think of that. Does your firm have individual industry group or practice group accounts? And who is staffing those? Do you think, you as lawyers, do you think that you are really stepping up to the plate and using your social media accounts to establish and nurture relationships so that you aren't just broadcasting from a team page? I would be really curious to know. I'm not seeing necessarily both sides of the equation really humming along together. I'm seeing sometimes a real strength in one area and maybe a little bit of growth in another. I mean, it is a process, obviously. And my expectation is never that everybody is 100%, cranking on all cylinders in every way, because it takes a lot of resources. And unless you are a firm that has a lot of resources, and as I mentioned earlier, right now it's a tough time to have a lot of resources because there's a lot going on within firms and a lot of challenges. So unless you do that, then what I'd like to see you do is step up to the plate and actually help this situation along. Get in there, use your accounts, establish relationships, nurture them, so that this question almost becomes like, oh, I don't even, do we really need a practice team or an industry group, page or account on social media? Yeah, that would be nice. But you know what? We are doing so much of this relationship building out here that it's just a nice afterthought, actually. I believe I do have a comment. Yeah, Deb Dobson. Hello, Deb Dobson. I've been in messaging with you today and now here. As you probably know, I encourage my attorneys to be active with their own accounts and build relationships. Yes, Deb has done an enormous amount of training at her firms, individually with attorneys and with groups, where yes, Deb and I go way back. We're sort of the OG in social media for law firms, and come from a time when we understood that it's about building relationships, because way back, way back in, social media years, it feels like, 30 years ago, but maybe it's only 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago that we've known each other, Deb, something like that. We were brought up in all of this at a time when it was all about building relationships. And so, Deb, your comment definitely does not surprise me. Yeah, that's always been your path. Yep. Yeah, talk about relationships. That's what this is all about, right? This is all about relationships. And if our lawyers, I have to watch where I am, because when these comments come up, then all of a sudden it can cover the face. Yes. So, although I think there is, let me try something here. There also is. Yeah, it changes a little, but I like your comment to be bigger, Deb. So I'm going to keep you big. Um, yeah, it's all about relationships. And we work within a profession that definitely relies on establishing and nurturing relationships. And Deb, you are a shining example of doing that. You do that on a regular basis. Your interaction, just yours personally, is extremely strong. And, any firm is so happy to have you be a part of them, because you not only have the mechanics of everything else that you work on in legal technology, but you also know the practical and the realistic parts of using digital media and how to create relationships. So you are an absolutely wonderful blend of putting that all together. So it's thank you for contributing. I appreciate it more than you know. So again, I would love to know, we've been talking about should your practice teams have their own special social media accounts, practice teams or industry groups, whichever, same discussion. So I'd like you to consider everything that we talked about today and just, let me know your thoughts. I would appreciate it. Again, just a reminder, I'm Nancy Merland with Merland Marketing and Social Media. And if you do have any questions or just have any comments, obviously always you can make them in the comments. But this is how you can also get a hold of me. And I have a question. We have same with you. Thanks, Deb. Shireen, it is so nice to see you. I was in virtual lunch with you today, actually a couple times this week, right? And now, what should lawyers do to become more comfortable with building relationships with social media? It's a very good question. And I think one of the most important things to know is that social and digital media are just additional relationship building tools. When you think about how lawyers create relationships in, the face-to-face world, and even I feel funny even saying face-to-face anymore because we are still face-to-face. And when we're on Zoom with people, we're face-to-face. It's just that out there in the wild that we haven't been able to do so much the last few months. Establishing relationships it's so many things. It's talking to people, it's listening to people, it is giving them suggestions when they talk about a specific issue or a challenge. It's providing, it's calling somebody after the fact or emailing them and saying, I enjoyed our conversation today. And, here's something else that you might consider. I had another thought after that. Or here is an article that I just read from somebody else, from Deb Dobson, that might hit home with you about what we talked about today. Well, you know what? Social networking is so much the same as that. It is stepping out of our comfort zones a little bit, going ahead and getting comfortable with talking to people. When someone posts something on their profile, on their news feed, on social media, it's jumping into that conversation and just making a comment, just like you would do if you were standing in a small group of people at a reception or a dinner of some sort, or a breakfast, or whatever it might be, and adding perspective. It's not taking over a conversation necessarily, and neither is doing that face to face. So it's just doing a lot of the same, but just doing it with a keyboard, or whether that keyboard is, right here on your desk or it's in your hands. It's just getting to know people. And if you're curious about something, asking somebody what they mean by something. I mean, really, it's a conversation that takes place here. And the more lawyers do it, the more comfortable they become with it. So I think it's a lot of serving others before we serve our own content, if you will. And, like I said, it's looking at the discussions, scroll a little bit through, and the people you have followed, for example, if it is, and Shireen, you're on LinkedIn, following this, you scroll through for 30 seconds, and you probably, since these are people you've chosen to connect with on LinkedIn, these are probably people who are saying things that are of interest to you. So it's taking the time, to stop and click a reaction. If you are uncomfortable in stage one, and I know, Shireen, you're not. I know you're just asking this for others because you're a wonderful networker online. And I look forward to the day when we can actually network in person. But it's, if you're only comfortable at the start clicking a reaction on someone's comment, then start with that and, realize how easy that is. Then the next step is, find some piece of content that you're comfortable with and make a comment about it. If somebody is sharing a blog post, then make sure you read it before you comment, because people have been burned before when they haven't read content and maybe there's something inflammatory that they didn't click through and read, and they go ahead and share it, and people are a little surprised by it. So as long as you feel good about it, you might even pull out a quote from it and put it in quotes. I've done this where I've shared. Yeah, same here. Thank you. You can tell the delay that happens, because I think that was in response to, can't wait till we can do that face to face. And I've often just shared someone else's content, their blog post, or even something they've written on one of the social networks. And I'll put a quote from their article or their blog post, and I'll make sure I put it in quotes so that people know it wasn't mine. And, I'll just preface it maybe by saying, I just read this and this really hit home. And then I'll just put it in quotes and to make sure that everybody knows it's from that person and even mention that person. So you know what? I think we put so much pressure on ourselves as professionals, whether professional business people or professionals as lawyers, to think that we have to be perfect in these spaces. I mean, look at what I've done here. I mean, I've been on for a while with you, 20 minutes, and I have stumbled and fluttered a couple times, but you know what? It's just a conversation. And I think if we all go into it with that attitude that we get better every time we do any of this and we become more comfortable, and that no one is going to slam us because we might have, used a word incorrectly, or we might have, stuttered over something. And if they do slam us for that, well, then my gosh, those aren't people we need to even be connected to in the first place, because who needs judgmental people in our lives, right? So thank you for asking the question. It really is that we just use a lot of the same practices. We just don't have to travel as far or get in our cars. We don't have to necessarily spend a ton of money to go to a dinner or an event or a major conference. We can just open up social media and we can interact with those people we've chosen to interact with. So becoming comfortable is really just doing those. There are best practices like that, and those are just a few, and then it's just doing it. And the longer we do it, then the more comfortable we all are. The more comfortable everybody is, the more they use these platforms. And that really is the only way. Some people come born with the DNA that makes them comfortable to, jump into something like social media or jump onto a live streaming network and just let her rip and just be comfortable with it. That's a rare person, because I think everybody starts somewhere. I wrote a blog post, oh gosh, I bet it was 10 years ago now, called Nobody Starts or No One Starts in the Middle. And I think that's true of just about anything. Number one, it's impossible to start in the middle because you have to start somewhere. But the point being that we all have to go through the baby steps of learning. And as we do things, we become better at them. And I think as long as we go into it with somewhat of a humble approach or a humble heart, people are going to know that. And people give so much more grace than we ever expect them to. And so don't be, I would, long way of answering your question is to not be so hard on ourselves and to just get started. And after you do it once or twice, you'll be surprised how much easier it even is after once or twice, right? But keep it, just keep going. Just keep going. If you have to practice something on your own, if you think you want to, diving into live streaming would be, several steps down the road, or posting a video, you know what? Record it. Don't go live. Record it. Hold up your phone. Record it. Look at it. If you absolutely hate it, don't post it. If you think it's, that's not so bad, then post it and say, this is my first time, or you know what, I'm just getting the hang of this. But there are a couple points there that I wanted to communicate. So go easy on me, but this is this is the message I wanted to get across today. Let me know what you think. And, if people go into that and not be real braggadocious and not acting like they have to be, their expectation is that they are perfect. Yeah, I'm a perfectionist as much as the next person, but I also know that I'm going to fumble and stutter on things, and that's just okay sometimes. I can edit those things out on my podcast, but I won't edit all of it out. So I think it's just we have to be nice. We have to be nice to ourselves, as Anthony, what's Anthony's last name? When I went through Mari Smith's social media certification course in 2009, and Anthony, oh gosh, I wish I could think of his last name. He made a comment. We were all together in San Diego. We were together for 8 weeks, and we had 16 classes all together. And then we finished with 2 days in person in San Diego with Mari to really do a deep dive and an immersion. And I do remember Anthony saying something like, if you're going to be this hard on yourself, if you're going to beat yourself up, do it with a feather. And I've always remembered that. And you know what? Right after hang up like it's a phone, right after we get off this, I'm going to remember Anthony's last name. But if I remember it, I'll tag him. But yeah, I have always remembered that ever since he said that in 2009. It was a good experience for many, many reasons, not the least of which is Mari and her influence and what she did for all of us in the very, very early days of all of this. But Anthony's comment will always be, always be in my mind. If you're going to beat yourself up, do it with a feather, and then I would add, and then just move on. So thank you so much for prompting a question that I spent so much time answering. But I do appreciate it so much. And it was really nice to see you at lunch today as well. Ari's lunches, his virtual lunches are wonderful. They're fascinating. They're heartwarming. It's been a group of people I've thoroughly enjoyed meeting. Those of you who don't know exactly what I'm talking about, Ari Kaplan, who is one of my pups just walked in. Ari Kaplan, who is a leader in marketing technology, legal tech, has hosted now for 90 days, the Mondays through Fridays, since quarantine started, since we were all on lockdown, and he has hosted a virtual lunch, and it is from 12 to 1 every Monday through Friday. And it has been so much fun because Shireen, for example, Shireen is someone I've come to know and really think so highly of you, and so many others that I've been on these lunches with that I've never met in person. Ari and I have met once, I think, at a conference. He pointed out, and he remembered, which I really admired. But so many others that I have just known or seen online, and some that I've never seen before, but that I've come to know them. So everyone's invited to those. Great to see you at Ari's lunch as well. Yeah, Ari's lunches have been wonderful. Anybody's welcome to join if they want to talk about legal tech, marketing technology. Again, 12 to 1, and just let me know if you want the link. I can find it, or actually have it in my calendar. But he has guests on there as well, so that's a fun one. That's something kind of an unexpected and fun event that I have found throughout this whole coronavirus, COVID-19, hibernation, whatever situation that we're in. So that's been fun. So, Shireen, yeah. So, thank you so much. Well, I don't see any other comments here. So, I just want to thank all of you so much for being here. I want to thank you for the comments that you've made and for asking questions that have caused me to then answer them here. And again, if you're watching either live or on the replay, I appreciate you so much. Again, I'm Nancy Merland with Merland Marketing and Social Media. And have a great weekend, or if you are watching this after the weekend, have a great week ahead. All right, take care, everyone. Oh no, there's another comment I don't want to leave. Likewise, Nancy, I'm so impressed. Oh, thank you. Thank you. What a nice way to end. All right, thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care.